Jimi Hendrix is suddenly lighting up headlines again, and fans can't stop buzzing. More than 50 years after his rise to stardom, Washington State has finally acknowledged what die-hard music lovers always believed. And now, for the first time since the pandemic, something massive is unfolding on stages across the US. Big-name artists are scrambling to be a part of it. One legendary performer is even coming out of retirement just to join the movement. Online, it's chaos, in the best way, over the Jimi Hendrix revival. Born November 27, 1942, in Seattle, Hendrix's story begins in quiet surroundings that masked a turbulent storm underneath. His parents, Al and Lucille, were young, struggling, and often at odds. Lucille was just 17 when Jimi arrived into a world of instability and hardship. Al was stationed in Alabama with the military. When he requested leave to see his newborn, the army not only refused, they threw him in the brig for over a month. From the start, Jimi's life was marked by trauma and uncertainty. Both of his parents drank heavily. Their home life was rocky, and the state eventually intervened. 4 of Jimi's siblings were taken away and placed in foster care. Brief period, Jimi was sent to live with a family friend in California. In 1945, when Al returned from service, he brought Jimi back to Seattle. But in 1951, the household was split again. Al and Lucille divorced. Al took custody of Jimi and his younger brother Leon. When Lucille died of liver disease in 1958, Jimi was just 15. Al didn't allow his sons to attend the funeral. Instead, he handed them whiskey and said, "This is how men deal with loss." Around this painful time, Jimi started to find solace in music. It was something he always gravitated toward. At school, he'd carry around a broomstick and pretend it was a guitar. A social worker took notice and tried to get the school to buy him a real one, but the effort went nowhere. In 1957, at 15, Jimi discovered a broken ukulele with a single string while helping his dad clean out a home. The woman who lived there told him he could keep it. He taught himself how to play using Elvis Presley songs. After Lucille passed away, Al finally bought him his first guitar, a lifeline in a chaotic world. Music became his escape. He immersed himself in blues and early rock, learning everything by ear. In 1959, at age 17, he dropped out of Garfield High School. All he wanted was to play. He joined local bands like the Rockin' Kings and the Velvetones. Steady work was hard to come by, and money was always tight. Sometimes he even slept in abandoned cars. But none of that stopped him. He was always watching, always learning. One local guitarist, Butch Snipes, blew Jimi's mind when he played the guitar with his teeth. Jimi saw Butch Snipes' wild guitar stunt and ran with it. He made the teeth playing trick part of his own act. But in 1961, at just 19, Jimi's world took another sharp turn. He was arrested for riding in a stolen car and spent a week behind bars. Faced with a choice between prison or the military, he chose the army. That decision would shape the next chapter of his life. He was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division, also known as the Screaming Eagles. Hendrix was drawn to the division's fearless legacy. These were the same soldiers who parachuted into Normandy on D-Day. Jimi started basic training at Fort Ord in California, and by August 1961, he was officially a private. He was shipped to Fort Campbell in Kentucky. But military life clashed with his creative spirit. He hated the rigid structure. In letters to his father, he vented his frustrations. But one thing helped him cope: a red Danelectro guitar he called Betty Jean. That guitar became his lifeline. And at Fort Campbell, fate stepped in. Jimi met bassist Billy Cox. Music instantly bonded them, and their friendship would last for years. They formed a band called the King Casuals, performing at the base and local spots nearby. Even in uniform, Jimi couldn't ignore the pull of music. His time in the army ended abruptly in 1962, just 13 months after he enlisted. The official reason: an ankle injury from his 26th parachute jump. But deeper issues were brewing. Reports noted his poor performance, missed bed checks, and general disregard for protocol. Some even claimed he exhibited homosexual tendencies, grounds for discharge back then. Despite the red flags, Hendrix walked away with an honorable discharge. He and Billy Cox moved to Clarksville, Tennessee, determined to keep chasing music. They kept the King Casuals name and hit the local club scene. It was here that Jimi started crafting his signature sound. Being left-handed, he flipped a right-handed guitar upside down. He also began experimenting with dramatic stage moves, playing behind his head or with his teeth. The showmanship wasn't optional. Hendrix once said, "Down there you have to play with your teeth or else you get shot." It was his way of explaining how ruthless audiences could be. Technical skill wasn't enough. You had to wow them. And if you didn't, you were gone. Some bandleaders thought Jimi's style was too over the top, that he was stealing the spotlight. But Jimi kept pushing boundaries. Between 1962 and 1965, he worked the chitlin circuit, a string of venues where black musicians could play during segregation. It was a tough grind. Pay was lousy, or non-existent. Musician Bobby Rush once said they were sometimes paid with food instead of money. By January 1964, Jimi felt stuck. Years of backing other acts, playing their songs, and living under their rules had worn him down. He craved control over his sound and career. So, he made a bold move. He left the backup gigs behind and moved into Harlem's iconic Hotel Theresa. That's where he met lithophane Faye Priggen, a key figure in the Harlem music scene. Faye became more than a girlfriend. She gave Jimi shelter, encouragement, and a reason to keep going. Around that same time, he met Arthur and Albert Allen, twin brothers who opened doors in Harlem's club scene. Jimi hit the circuit hard, bouncing from band to band and venue to venue, trying to make a name for himself. Then came a breakthrough. In February 1964, he entered the famed amateur night at the Apollo Theater. He won first place. That victory gave him something he desperately needed: confidence. He proved he could command a stage solo. Shortly after, a connection from the Joe Tex band set him up with an audition for Ronnie Isley. Jimi crushed the audition and landed a spot as lead guitarist in the Isley Brothers band. This was a real opportunity, and he grabbed it. In March 1964, Hendrix recorded his first studio track, a two-part single called Testify with the Isleys. It dropped in June, but didn't chart. Still, it marked his entry into professional recording. By May, he was working on Mercy Mercy with Don Covey. That track hit number 35 on the Billboard chart in August. Hendrix toured with the Isleys through much of 1964, but by fall, he grew restless again. The same songs every night dulled his excitement. He needed a new spark, so he left. Soon after, he joined Little Richard's band, The Upsetters. In February 1965, they headed to Los Angeles. While there, Jimi recorded I Don't Know What You Got, But It's Got Me with Little Richard, a soulful track written by Don Covey and released by VJ Records. It barely cracked the charts, peaking at number 92 for just 1 week. Little Richard's star was dimming, but the experience gave Hendrix more exposure. While staying at Hollywood's Wilcox Hotel, he met singer Rosa Lee Brooks. She invited him to play guitar on her single. The A-side was My Diary, the B-side UT. Both songs were written by Arthur Lee. Jimi played on both and met Lee during the session. That meeting sparked a friendship, and Jimi became a fan of Lee's band, Love. In July 1965, Hendrix hit a new milestone. He made his first ever TV appearance on Night Train, a local Nashville show on WLAC-TV. He performed as part of Little Richard's band, backing Buddy and Stacy on the song Shotgun. That rare footage is now the earliest video of Hendrix live on stage. Things with Little Richard weren't exactly smooth. Hendrix's bold stage antics clashed with Richard's polished image. He loved to steal the spotlight, with flashy clothes and even flashier solos. By late July, tensions boiled over. Richard's brother Robert fired Hendrix from the band. But just days later, on July 27, 1965, Jimi signed his first recording contract. He inked the deal with Juggy Murray of Sue Records and a management firm called Copa. Soon after, he briefly rejoined the Isley Brothers and recorded another single, Move Over and Let Me Dance with Have You Ever Been Disappointed on the B-side. Same year, a fateful meeting changed his direction. Hendrix met Curtis Knight at a hotel. Knight fronted an R&amp B-band called the Squires. Hendrix joined them for an 8-month run. In October 1965, they recorded How Would You Feel, backed with Welcome Home. Hendrix had already signed a 2-year contract with Sue Records. On October 15th, he added more fuel to the fire. He signed another deal, this time a 3-year agreement with a producer named Ed Chalpin. The collaboration didn't last long, but the contract did. It would haunt Hendrix later in his career. Even while playing with the Squires, Jimi kept hustling. He toured with Joey D and the Starlighters, recorded with sax legend King Curtis, and played guitar on Ray Sharp's Help Me, a 2-part single. By 1966, Hendrix finally got his first songwriting credits. He penned 2 instrumentals, Hornet's Nest and Knock Yourself Out, released under Curtis Knight and the Squires. But he was ready for something more. That year, Hendrix relocated to New York's Greenwich Village, where art, music, and counterculture collided. Creative energy lit a fire in him. He found steady work playing at Café Wah, on McDougal Street. There, he launched a new band, Jimi James and the Blue Flames. One member, Randy California, would go on to form the band Spirit. The Blue Flames gigged constantly across New York. These shows became Hendrix's experimental playground, where he fine-tuned his style and stage presence. In September 1966, the band performed some of their final shows at Café Au Go-Go in Manhattan, backing up blues singer John Hammond. Just days later, Hendrix took a leap that would rewrite music history. On September 24, 1966, he landed in London with almost nothing. Just a change of clothes, a guitar, some hair colors, and $40 borrowed dollars. The airport had just been renamed Heathrow. Earlier that summer, Hendrix had been gigging in New York under the name Jimmy James. Night at Café Wah, former Animals bassist Chas Chandler saw him play, and was blown away. Chandler had been scouting new talent to manage. Watching Hendrix shred live, he knew he'd found it. Just 12 days after Jimmy landed in London, the Jimi Hendrix Experience was born, on October 6, 1966. Chandler moved fast. He recruited bassist Noel Redding after hearing him audition for the new Animals lineup. Jimmy liked Redding's feel for blues, and his wild hairstyle. Chandler tapped Mitch Mitchell for drums. Mitchell had just been let go from Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames. He and Jimmy instantly connected over their shared love of rhythm and blues. Chandler also gave Hendrix a branding boost, suggesting he change the spelling of his name from Jimmy to Jimmy. It added flair and made the name unforgettable. The band hit the ground running. Within a week, they were opening for French rocker Johnny Hallyday in a 4-show tour across France. On October 23, they entered London's Delane Lee Studios to record their debut single, Hey Joe. Less than a month after Jimmy landed in England, they were already tracking, but recording wasn't smooth. Their powerful Marshall amps were so loud, they caused studio malfunction. Jimmy, nervous about his vocals, struggled at first. Stone Free, the B-side, was recorded on November 2nd. It was Hendrix's first original song with the band. Chandler pushed him to write so he could earn publishing royalties. Still, landing a record deal wasn't easy. Eventually, The Who's managers, Kit Lambert and Chris Stamp, signed him to their label, Track Records. But Track was brand new, so the debut single dropped through Polydor on December 16, 1966. Hey Joe entered the UK charts at number 41, eventually peaking at number 6 and staying for 10 weeks. TV spots on Ready Steady Go and Top of the Pops boosted the song's reach. Just months earlier, Hendrix was backing unknown singers in tiny New York clubs. Now, he was on the cusp of stardom. Chandler had a vision, and he wasn't wasting time. On October 1, 1966, barely a week after Hendrix arrived, he took him to a cream show at London Polytechnic. Jimmy asked to sit in. The band said yes. He played Killing Floor by Howlin' Wolf, and left the crowd stunned. Backstage, Eric Clapton lit a cigarette and muttered to Chandler, "You never told me he was that fucking good." Word started to spread. By mid-November, Hendrix was playing packed shows at the Bag O'Nails Club. The audience, rock royalty, Paul McCartney, John Lennon, Mick Jagger, Pete Townsend, Jeff Beck, and Brian Jones, floored. Kevin Ayers later said the room was filled with stars swearing in disbelief. During this whirlwind, Hendrix moved into 34 Montagu Square with girlfriend Kathy Etchingham. The flat belonged to Ringo Starr. Chandler and his girlfriend also moved in. Jimmy played elite spots like the Scotch of St. James, a club so exclusive that the Beatles and Stones had their own tables. Chandler had done it. He made Hendrix the hottest name in London in just 2 months. But tension wasn't far behind. Hendrix was fiercely protective of his sound. During early Hey Joe sessions, Chandler asked him to lower his amp volume. Jimmy exploded, saying he couldn't work under those conditions and threatening to return to New York. Chandler, cool under pressure, calmly placed Jimmy's passport and plane ticket on the mixing board. On then, he said, "Fuck off back to America." In another version, he simply said, "Piss off." Jimmy paused, grinned, and said, "All right, you called my bluff." That moment defined their partnership. Creative freedom with boundaries. Chandler knew how to guide genius without choking it. Then came the real breakthrough. June 18, 1967. Monterrey Pop Festival, a warm California night that would forever change Hendrix's legacy. In London, he was a sensation. In the US, he was a mystery. He knew this performance had to be unforgettable. The Who had just smashed their gear. Hendrix had to top it. Backstage, he asked for lighter fluid. He hid it behind his amp. Rolling Stones guitarist Brian Jones introduced him to the crowd. Hendrix ended his set with Wild Thing. He dropped to his knees, flipped his guitar, and said, "I'm going to sacrifice something I really love, man." Then he torched his Stratocaster. He smashed it 7 times and hurled the flaming remains into the crowd. Photographer Ed Carife captured it all, creating one of the most iconic images in rock history. That night, Jimi Hendrix became a legend. Music writer Robert Christgau later said Hendrix unveiled a guitar style so revolutionary, no one has matched it since. His debut album, Are You Experienced?, hit the UK on May 12, 1967. It spent 33 weeks on the charts, peaking at number 2, just behind Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The UK version of Are You Experienced omitted hits like Purple Haze, in favour of deeper blues tracks like Red House, which Hendrix disliked. Reprise released a psychedelic US version on August 23, 1967, adding popular singles and removing songs like Red House. The album became a cult sensation on FM radio and charted at number 5 on the Billboard charts, staying in the top 40 for 76 weeks. In 1968, Hendrix released Electric Ladyland, his only number 1 album, featuring hits like Voodoo Child and his iconic cover of All Along the Watchtower. As fame grew, tensions with his band surfaced, and he sought more control over his music, even playing bass himself at times. Hendrix and manager Michael Jeffrey bought the Old Generation Club in 1968, later building Electric Lady Studios, designed for creativity. Despite earning large sums per show, Hendrix faced financial strain, and the studio cost nearly $1 million by 1970. By the time it officially opened, Hendrix was already in England. Tensions within the Jimi Hendrix Experience led to their final show in June 1969. Later that year, Hendrix performed at Woodstock at 8 a.m. on August 18, playing the Star-Spangled Banner despite objections from his manager. In 1966, Hendrix began experimenting with LSD, which influenced his music and led to bold performances like the famous Guitar Fire at Monterrey Pop. While substances fueled his creativity, alcohol caused personal turmoil, leading to violent outbursts, including an incident with his girlfriend. Hendrix's alcohol issues began early, worsening as his fame grew. He was arrested multiple times for drunken brawls, with alcohol fueling his mood swings. In May 1969, he was arrested at Toronto Airport for heroin possession, but that night he performed at Maple Leaf Gardens, even changing the lyrics to Red House to reflect his situation. In 1969, Hendrix faced serious drug possession charges, each carrying a 20-year sentence. His bandmates believed the drugs were planted, and after a trial in December, Hendrix was acquitted. He celebrated with a peace sign, calling it the best Christmas gift he'd ever received. However, his troubles continued. In September 1970, while touring Europe, Hendrix was confronted by Eva Sundqvist, who claimed he had fathered her child. Exhausted and troubled, Hendrix's performance that night was chaotic. Later that month, he tragically died on September 18 at age 27. After a night of drinking, he took a fatal overdose of sleeping pills. Despite attempts to save him, he was pronounced dead at 12:45 p.m. Hendrix's death remains mysterious, with some believing he drowned, though toxicology reports showed little alcohol in his system. The case was reopened in 1992 but closed without new answers. Hendrix's legacy endures. In March 2025, he was awarded the Washington Medal of Merit, recognizing his global influence. The Experience Hendrix Tour also returned after a 5-year hiatus, celebrating his revolutionary sound. The tour's final show in April will feature blues legend Buddy Guy, a personal influence on Hendrix, making it a special tribute to the iconic guitarist. In 2025, Jimi Hendrix's music still inspires. The Experience Hendrix Tour celebrates his legacy, with artists like Kenny Wayne Shepherd and Buddy Guy paying tribute to his revolutionary sound.